Welcome back to another edition of Real Estate Roundtable. I'm Rob Moore, and today we're talking about roofs, or as the man below me, Jeff Lichtenstein, would say, roofs. I think he says roughs.
It's a roof.
It's a roof, a roof. It's a roof.
There's roof and then rough that people pronounce
Roof,
different.
rough.
In Chicago, it's we have this nasally accent, so there's different words that always pop out differently. So nobody knows everyone.
Tomato, tomato, potato, potato, I guess. And we're joined by a man, Al Pestana, owner of Pestana Roofing, and he's going to tell us all about roofing, new roofs, roof repairs, what to look for, why roofs in South Florida. If you're from up north, you're like, man, why do these roofs not last so long down here? Well, there's a lot of different issues why the roof does not last as long. And Al's going to break down all of that for us. But before we do that, Jeff, I wanted to tell you guys, I was going to tell you guys a quick joke about roofs, but I figured it would be,
Let's hear the joke.
well, I was going to, but I figured it would be over your heads.
Ah, we are paying attention.
All right. So, Jeff, I'm going to let you take it away. Let's find a little bit more about Al, his business, and what he does.
So, Al, I know Al I was looking for, roofer years ago. There we go, for my own home, and talking to Kevin Rose, who's just an incredible inspector in the area, and your name, popped up, and did a really good job on my home, and I know you do great jobs everywhere on for lots of different people. So, tell us a little bit about. What your philosophy is. You have multiple companies, and what they do, just so we have a framework and your background a little bit.
Okay. Well, I've been in this area for a really long time. Got into roofing really because my dad was in it. Wasn't my first choice, but learned to love the business. It's very interesting down here because of the weather. People don't realize this climate that we have here is really brutal on the roofing, and so there's a lot of aspects to it. And the other thing is there are a lot of companies that are here that have been here for a while, but a lot of them came after the storms, and so there's a lot of I won't say gypsies, but a lot of people down here doing roofing, and quality is not always on the top of their list. So we pride ourselves in trying to do, good quality work. Obviously, when you have a business and your name is behind the business, I, for one, like to be on top of everything to make sure everything goes well. So, been in business since 1991, and started another little company back a few years back, and I wanted to do more repair work and concentrating, kind of separating the two. So that's how I started Roof Express. Because repairs is kind of a whole different concept. It's just basically a Band-Aid, and but it helps a lot of people get through times before they have to spend the big money to re-roof. So and basically that's in a nutshell. Most people would rather repair, the roof once or twice before they actually get into the big expense of, re-roofing.
Yeah, roofing is like everybody wants a new kitchen, everybody wants a new bathroom.
Right.
Nobody ever says, the third bedroom is great and it has a new roof. Right. It's something that you need, but it's something you look at once, and you look at it more than once, but it's, it looks great, and then that's usually the end of it.
Doesn't have a big sexy appeal.
No, but it's something that people need to plan for, because it costs as much as a new kitchen, and sometimes more, and there's different efficiencies with it, and it's one of those things that when it hits you, like it goes on in our neighborhood right now. And I had a neighbor whose home sold here, and I was telling Frank was his name. When you sell your house, nobody in the neighborhood's done it yet. But within a year or two, we're at that point where once it starts and the new buyer sees that, and if you can get away with a clean roof report, you may save yourself 30, 40, grand on a sale. And really, people should be putting aside $1,200, $1,500 in a bank account each year, so that there's not a surprise. when it occurs. So buyers come down here, and I always let a buyer know, hey, this is what's going to be. You need to be aware of what the roof is and how much time is left on it, whether it's 2 years old or 15 years old, because you've got to allot that into your future payments. So they come from New York or Chicago, and they want to know, why does when I'm there, roofs last 70 years or whatever. Why here is it there a 20, 25-year span of roofs? Can you help us with that?
Well, it really boils down to the extreme weather conditions that we have here, especially in the summertime with extreme heat. And then you get a little thunderstorm in the middle of the day, and it cools the roof down temporarily, and then when the sun comes back out and heats it back up. So the big temperature drops, help, really age these roofs a lot quicker. And the misconception is that the tile roofs absorb, a majority of it, but they do. But in a way, the underlayment under that is the waterproofing. So the tile's just to protect that. You could have a 15-year-old roof that looks brand new, but it starts leaking because the underlayment starts, having issues. One of the things that they do here, or they used to do quite often, was put a nail through a perfectly good waterproofing system. So that's a recipe for disaster eventually. And then the houses are built here, more for looks. They have these designs that are appealing to the eye, but they're roofing situations. Anytime there's a valley, the wall transition, all those are all points of, inspection where you got to really check it out and make sure that it doesn't get any worse. So a maintenance issue every 4 or 5 years would be good to see how your roof is doing. On shingles, it's not so bad because that's your main waterproofer. You can easily see it, and if it's bad or not just by looking at it. The tile roofs, you don't, because it's all happening up underneath.
What's the difference? What does the underlayment do? I hear the word underlayment all the time.
Yeah.
How is that different from the importance compared to what's on top?
So the underlayment really is the waterproofing mechanism. And so then the tile or even the metal is really to protect that, to get the long years out of it. So let's say a tile roof, a flat tile roof, doesn't last quite as long as a rolled tile, just because the extra heat from the attic and from up top kind of cook that underlayment real quicker. Conversely, with shingles, that material is made to be on the outside and to absorb all the elements and all that. And so, if you get less maintenance and probably a little longer time. I've seen basic shingle roofs last 25, 30 years, and you don't really get that out of the tile roof. And you say, well, why is that? You're supposed to have a 2-layer roof when you have the tile. But the tile's just aesthetics. It makes it look pretty and all that, but a lot of times it holds water and creates issues up underneath that you don't see until there's a problem. So,
what's better in terms of quality, in terms of the outside? Is it there's metal, there's shingle, there's tile, there's clay tile, which is a heavier look,
and they're all different looks, and when you talk about a shingle roof, that is everything. That's the looks, that's the waterproofer, that's the one-shot feel. When you talk about metal roof, tile, clay roofs, those are all beautification things. So where they make the roof look nice. So what really is important is the underlayment. Make sure that that's been done properly and with good material.
And how do you make a roof last a little bit longer? How should a homeowner care for their roof? Should they be doing periodic inspections of it, or does pressure cleaning hurt it?
You don't want to get into doing too much pressure on an older roof. Maybe in a newer roof it's not too bad, but now what they're doing is basically doing more of a solution cleaning with a little bit of pressure just to keep it clean. You don't want to do too much chemicals because that can hurt the underlayment. And then basically your clay roofs actually don't hold mold. So you don't ever have to really pressure clean or clean, they
Huh,
just
I never knew
stay
that.
nice for a really long time. I've done roofs that are 25 years old and look as good as, year one. A lot of it is just, the smoothness and the material, where you have a tile roof has a lot of pores, and the pores, collect the dirt.
You were talking to me about waterproofing. Is that something that you do at the beginning process? Is that only for new construction, or can you waterproof it
Yeah,
at any
the waterproofing
stage?
is when you first do the roof, and then if you re-roof it, you tear it down to the wood, and then you put in your multiple layers. The quality difference is really where you get your bang for your buck as far as getting a longer roof out of it. You want to go with a heavier grade underlayment, and some people will spend extra money on the looks on the tile or even metal, but it's also important to spend a little extra on the underlayment with different thicknesses, and make sure that if you as a homeowner are doing it, you have a better choice. If it's done through a community or something like that, they usually go with the starter grade and the basic grade.
What's the difference between, I hear like there's tarring, mopping, stretching? What are the differences? Or what do all
Well,
those terms mean?
hot mopping has been around for forever, and the new system now is a peel and stick. It's basically a convenient thing, but they make it so the material stretches, and that's important when you have extreme temperature drops like we have in Florida. The material's able to expand and contract a little bit, and so you lose that with the hot mopping system, because it has its 20-year, and it may be good for a solid 20 years, and after that it starts crackling and cracking into the leaf start. Um, the peel and stick, it still hasn't been out long enough. I think it's been out maybe 15 years. So, if they're claiming they could go 30, we'll see, if it gets to that. But the material grade difference when you go from the regular cap sheet hot mop into what they call the modified is quite a bit of the difference material wise. It's kind of like stacking up 3 credit cards versus 1 credit card in thickness. So you get a little bit more, protection there. So that's what I would recommend.
What does modified exactly mean, though?
Well, modified is just the underlayment has a chemical like an asphalt, and it just has more of it, and it has more of an ability to stretch, contract, especially with the heat. And then they have a granule system on top. Kind of almost looks like a shingle, versus the other one's more of a smooth, healthy looking material, much thinner.
But when you get to that, when you're at that point where the home is 15, 18 years old, 20 years old, what do you need to do in terms of watching to extend it out a little bit longer? And you want to do a roof before it's ready, by a year or two?
Yes, and so what happens is, let's say the industry considers the tile roof, it should be 25 years. A lot of these projects that were done early on in the early 2000s, they're done with the nail system, which is no longer allowed. So basically, you're putting a nail through a perfectly good waterproofing system. Now that nail is not stainless; it's not, a long-lasting material. So by year 8, 9, 10, that nail's already suffering because of all the rain we get here, and contraction, the nail hole, all that stuff, and it causes water to get in there quicker than it should. Um, you know, Another thing that we like to do as an added is, along all the areas, the wall flashings, anything that would be maintenance, we like to double up on the material, make sure that those areas are protected, valleys as well. That's where all the water runs through. So by doing a few upgrades, you can make sure that you get that roof into, from year 20 to 25 to perform better. So many roofs down here, even in nice $1 million houses, year 7, 8, 9 are not performing, with leaks and all that. And a lot of it's due to, just the poor install of it. Nobody wants to spend that extra money, because you don't really see it. And so that's really where it's at, as far as that.
You, you know, today you see air conditionings don't last as long. You know, washer and dryers seem to go 6-8 years, and then they're ready to roll with some of the construction with it. We had all this extra in 2005 and 6 and 4. There was all that construction going on. Do you see anything with the quality in there where they were putting homes up so fast in some of the communities where there was any poor workmanship going on, and if so, are those homes more vulnerable?
Well, they were what I consider cookie cutter, or just multiple housings, and they were just putting them up as fast as they could. And again, the fastest way to do it would be to put those piles on with a nail system. It wasn't until I think 2006 where they switched the code where you had to now use screws and no more nails. So from 2006 on, they should be at least screwed on, which that's better. But it's just that they really didn't care about the roof performing in the long term. They just want to build these new houses as quickly as possible. And a lot of the roofs perform well the first 5 years, and then you have the second 5 and third 5. So on average, by your third 5 year, by 15 years, you're going to have some kind of form of a roofing issue that you look for. A lot of times you can see them. If you have a white fascia board, you'll see some staining on it. Looks like little coffee stains that are dripping down. Usually behind if there's a gutter, and those are early signs of leaking. So we do a lot of repairs and developments, and that's a telltale sign. And a lot of times there's no leaking inside the house, and when we get into them, there is wood damage where we have to repair the wood, and that's due because usually in that first strip of metal, they don't do the nice sealing with the extra roofing material, and so it fails quickly. And so a lot of these people that are from up north, they're not used to having roofing issues on a house that's 5, 10, 15 years old. Roofing up there is a little different. Material is different, and certainly the weather conditions are different. And then you could do multiple layers for shingles up there, one on top of the other, almost as a weekend project up there. So, and here it's different because the extra moisture and humidity we have really is bad in the long term for water intrusion and wood. So,
what is I've heard a lot of talk about solar coming in to play out, like in California and things. Is there any talk of that, and if so, how far is that away?
Yeah, it's still in the early stages here, although you've seen a lot more solar companies out. I still, don't know how it's going to be here in the long run. I mean, certainly we have the sun that's good here, but we have such extreme weather conditions with the rain, and these I just finished one job where they had so many solar attachments on the roof, and all those solar attachments are gonna initially be okay, but then eventually you're gonna need some kind of maintenance. You're gonna have leaks through those little attachments, and so many of them throughout the roof. So again, it's kind of new here. You might see more of it in the next 5 to 10 years, and I understand there's a nice tax break, but to me, you basically traded your utility bill for the solar bill.
Are they putting the ones I've seen have always been like solar, like panels? Are they doing it with? Do they have tiles yet? Where the tiles are actually?
Tesla's come out with something like that. That's also in the early stages. I think the first solar Tesla roof went up in like I'm going to say Nebraska or Kansas, one of those areas where the weather conditions aren't there as bad. So that's a product of the future. I think there's a lot of what ifs and stuff. Certainly the issue here, what we have is the wind code is 170 miles an hour. So you have a bigger issue with them flying off if they're not properly attached. Where places like Kansas or Nebraska is not going to have that issue, although they do have tornadoes. So different areas will have a different way to install and all. The benefits are great once you get around paying for the system. The systems are very expensive. So if you're going to be in your home for 15 or 20 years, it makes sense. But you're only going to be in your home 5 or 7 years, I don't know how much sense it makes.
And what do you have to do? Is there other standards, whether it's wind mitigation or hurricanes, that you have to to look for?
My understanding is that they do have to secure it to like a truss system or something like that, so it does withstand the current wind codes. It's not just throwing them on. Back in the day, there were more of the solar water heater panels, and they were just big sluggy things, and they went there 20 years, and after that, a lot of people just discard them. But the solar for the electric is different because you need more panels and throughout the roof and all that. But up on a roof, it's still different. I don't know if they could be put on the ground somewhere. That's what I would do if I had it. I'd just put it in a slant in the ground somewhere where they're properly attached, and then if you have a storm company, you could just lay them down, easy peasy, so you don't have to worry about that. But and I'm sure the solar guys would probably disagree. You want to be up higher and all that. But it's still kind of new, and I don't really know enough about it to get into too much detail. But I've done a couple of jobs, and so that's what I've noticed, that there's a lot of connections.
When you're buying a new roof, or even afterwards at some point, should you buy tiles extra so that if when you get to the 18-year mark and you want to make repairs, the problem is you run out of the tile a lot of times.
And that's the manufacturer thing. They usually every 5 to 10 years go through and they look and see what tiles, colors sell and don't sell, and so they could discontinue. However, if you had one of those colors that they discontinue, you could get that batch. It costs you a little more, but you could get it. We always try to leave, a couple dozen tiles. Sometimes people want 200, and sometimes they don't want any. It really depends. And it's just something that 5 years from now they can decide that they don't make that color or that even profile anymore. So.
I'll see. I've heard different people. I'll hear, people just tell me, well, I bought something where they're sealing the roof and it's going to last another 15 years, towards the end of its life. Or are those just sales ploys, or what are they selling there? I'm sure you crazy things, but maybe not.
It's not very effective. Anytime you put and you can do that with just a painting, elastic marriage. Anytime you put a paint on top of a roofing system, now you've taken the waterproofing from the bottom and put it up the top. So that means that paint, that system, whatever it is, has to withstand, the violent, rays that we have in Florida. And it usually doesn't last. If they say it lasts 10 years, it probably lasts 3. If they say it lasts 5, it probably lasts 8 months. And then you're reduced to doing maintenance. I've seen so many flat tile roofs with multiple layers of white coated paint, and all that does is traps the moisture. So eventually, it won't even need to leak. The moisture will just start rotting out the plywood. We've changed out those type of roofs, and when we get to them, the tile rips off the actual layer of the top of the plywood. We have to change out 50, 60 sheets of plywood. So the trade-off from spending a little bit on maintenance to prolong your roof really doesn't pay out. But then it catches up with you, and then you have to pay even more to repair the decking. So I wouldn't recommend it. To me, if you check those companies, a lot of them aren't in this area for really long.
Talk about insurance, because sometimes you'll hear somebody gets a free roof, or a lot of people had a free roof after the hurricane.
This thing is free. But there's insurance companies here. They know that if there's a storm, a real storm, that they have to pay out. I mean, that's part of it. And then there's some companies that are better than others. Really, it depends on that more than anything. Why some neighbors get the roof paid for and others don't. You have to get a good public adjuster, and basically, they battle the insurance company to, prove that the roof had some kind of damage. And the interesting thing is that years ago, I think maybe after the second wave of hurricanes, you used to get 5 years after the storm to put in a claim. Now they've lobbied and got it down to 3 years. which is a much shorter time frame to realize that your roof is failing quicker now because of storm issues. And I mean, we haven't had a big storm here in a long time, but still, you know, the damage.
So after a storm happens, whether it's I don't know if that qualifies as a tropical storm or that's
A named storm.
A major storm.
No, just a named storm. It could be a tropical storm.
A named storm. So should you get your roof inspected at that point if it's at a certain mark to see if there's issues?
Yeah, sometimes you can see immediate damage. Sometimes you can't. It really depends. It's not a bad idea. You know, sometimes from the ground you can't see that the tile roofs, the ridge caps, and some other tiles have become loose through some kind of wind damage. So, yeah, you definitely want to, you know, have that checked out. On shingles, you would know right away. You'd see, you know, if their shingle tabs are missing or, you know, if they're lifted or whatever. But on tile roofs, it's a little trickier because you can't really see unless you go up on the roof and kind of physically try to lift and see what's going on.
And so it's 3 years now for insurance claims. And then how long how old does a roof have to be for it to qualify?
I don't know that there's a set age. It just has to have damage. You know, it could be a 3-year-old roof. If we have a significant storm that caused damage, that's really why you get insurance. I just don't understand why after paying insurance for 30 years, they just don't hand you a check and go, here, thank you, and get your roof redone so we don't have to worry about it and raise everybody else's rates.
Right.
That's the story for another day.
So, I mean, is there a 20 or 25-year limit, or you know, if there's?
Well, they've actually, they consider a tile roof 25 years and a shingle and flat 20 years, and I've heard they're trying to lower the flat down to almost 10 years. So they don't last as long, obviously, but you know, what they're trying to do is just have you do the roofs before they have to.
Right. Why are the flat roofs last so much less?
Well, because the material gets immediate exposure, and then now you're at a flat incline. A lot of times the water settles on there, and so that adds to the problems. On a pitch roof, you know, the water sheds off and usually dries off quickly. But on a flat roof, you know, you have to have some pitch. You just can't beat that level. The years where they used to be tar and gravel roofs, those were great roofs. They've outlawed them now unless, you know, it's something specific through, you know, county or state or something that they allow. But for most, in general purposes, they consider those little T-rocks missiles, you know, so they can outlaw them.
When, you know, a lot of times I remember, you know, with inspections, Kevin will say that the perimeter is going. What does that mean exactly? Why is it all going at the same time?
Well, if you realize, you know, on a pitch roof, all the water sheds down to the eaves, and then typically on any type of tile roof, whether it's a flat or a rolled tile, your first course, the starter course, is going to have, you know, either a cement or metal or something there all along, and so and then that first course has to get foamed down, you know, for extra strength. So when you do that, all the water rushes and stays at that level. That doesn't dry up properly, and so it just works itself into, you know, having, you know, water issues where the rest of the roof may not. And so that's why I say, if you notice on your fascia boards that there's lines, you know, look like little coffee stains coming down, those are water drips, and that's the beginning stages.
Do you install gutters as well, by the way?
We don't in-house, but I have a contact that I use, and you know, I recommend, but we don't in-house.
And then, so for a new roof, how long does it typically take to put down, and can you describe the whole process?
Well, for different things, obviously for a shingle roof, that's much quicker. You know, typically a couple of days, you know, depending on the size. On a tile roof, it's a whole different process. The first process is, you know, if you're in a homeowner situation, you have to get approval, and then you have to order the tiles. They don't make the tiles generally much anymore to be stock. Some colors, yes, white, and some other colors, but you know, typically you have to, you know, get that pre-ordered. So there's a timetable once you get your approvals on all that, and then there's another couple of steps. So typically a tile roof, you know, could take anywhere from a few weeks, and then goes well to, you know, several weeks, 4, 5, 6 weeks.
Should the homeowner leave the house when it's going in?
It's not necessary. I mean, the first few days of the tear off is kind of loud and really uneasy if you have pets, but typically everything gets cleaned up in the day and right in, and so the immediate process is not really a big deal.
Yeah, the neighbor of my house, he got his replaced and he put a chair on my lawn and he's watching it like it's a ball game.
Yeah, that was interesting.
I like that. Not that exciting. Rob, you got some questions?
Yeah, I guess Al, just tell us about the importance of just having a licensed and insured roofer than just some guy you find that says I do roofs.
Right. Okay, and that's key. And I've been involved with the Roofing Association for a lot of years, and that's always a bone of contention. It is a crime and a felony here in Florida to act as a contractor, and which is a lot of people don't know that, but part of it is just there's a lot of flyby. They realize that the roofing industry is one of those that's not really as organized as, let's say, the electrical union or the AC and plumbing guys. So there's a lot of in and out, and how much is the job really cost. If you get 10 roofing estimates, you're going to get 10 different variations. Where if you've got 10 different quotes from AC or plumbing guys, they're going to be pretty much on track. The big thing about the roofing, obviously, is there's a lot of liability involved. You're putting your home, in trust with somebody that could potentially wanted to have guarded for your interest. So you want to make sure that they're well licensed and insured.
And it gets when you sell it, it's going to get checked out too.
Right.
A lot of times, it just had something, and they went back and they looked for it was a roof that was in 2003 to make sure it was licensed, and that was
and permitted and inspected. Right. So a lot of times they get permitted, they won't get fully inspected or finalized out, and that's one of the things that. A lot of that happened during the hurricanes. A lot of permits got pulled, but a lot of them just get inspected or finalized. So that's another problem.
So when you're either getting a repair, and a lot of guys don't do repairs. You do repairs, or you need a new roof. What is with you? How does it work?
Well, and repairs are putting fixing the area that for whatever reason by design or whatever has problems, and you can fix that area and then get another 8, 9, 10 more years out of your roof. So, there's instances where obviously if you have multiple leaks and the roof's really old, it doesn't make sense to throw good money after bad. But in a lot of cases, you do a lot of repairs for houses that are 5 to 10 years old, and so you don't want to necessarily re-roof the whole thing and just go on and fix those few areas.
Then you do a 7 to 10 year warranty for
on re-roofs. Yeah, that's kind of the standard. Some people will do 5 and all the way up to 15 to 20. But 7 to 10 seems to be the standard.
And what does that cover when you say
if you do the waterproofing?
Sorry.
Yeah, so that's for the workmanship. So if anything kind of happens with leaks or anything in that time period, it should be covered. That doesn't include obviously any acts of God like lightning, storms, or anything like that. But it's just basically ensures workmanship.
And I know you guys talked about this already, but I just want to get clarification. So, a normal shingle roof, what is the estimated? I know everything can be less or more. What's like the estimated time that a shingle roof should last in the state of Florida?
20 years is a good parameter, but I see more shingle roofs last between 20 and 25 years than I do tile roofs lasting between 20 and 25.
And so let's say I'm nearing that. I'm not, but let's just say I'm nearing that 20 or 25 mark, and I don't have any brown spots. It doesn't seem like roof seems like it's in pretty good shape. Should I still maybe just call someone to come check it out if it's getting near that time where I think I might need a new roof, but nothing's going on? Does that make sense?
Yeah. So, you want to be proactive. And again, with shingle roofs, it's a little different because you can really notice, stuff happening. You can see dipping from the plywood and all that. more apparent than you could on a tile roof. But on tile roofs, since you can't see it, it's good to have somebody go up there after probably year 15. Every few years, make sure everything's nice and tight and look for stuff. But you know, a lot of people don't. It's one of those things that you just wait for it to happen, and that's when you usually find out, oh, it cost this much. But yeah, a lot of people are proactive, and so to just do an overall check would be a bad idea.
And I think I have my next door neighbor. I won't mention his name. He's moved, but he's renting the property out. And the roof, I saw a couple weeks ago him up on the roof. What are you doing? And he was putting it looked like a cement, like a rubber cement in an area. He said, "We have a leak." And then he went down to the ground and he grabbed the hose and just started spraying to see if it would go back in. And he said everything was fine. And then 2 weeks later, he was back again on the roof. I said, "What are you doing?" He goes, "It's leaking again." And then he went down and he sprayed the thing. And I'm thinking, I think it's time. I think it's time that I know no one likes to do it, but it's time to probably put a new roof on that house. But
Yeah. But that's what I mean about, when people try to repair the roof topically, they try to put something on top. And, eventually, the water just kind of goes through and finds its way. You can stop it temporarily, but usually it's not a quick fix. Um, the real deal to fix a leak, you have to just go down to the source, either to the wood or to the underlayment, and fix it at that point. Whether it's shingle or tile, anything you can do on top of that stuff really needs to get work.
Want to roll through a few pictures, Rob?
yeah. Give me, hold on 1 second. Look over this way. Here we go.
Where was that? Where was that? The roof that's that Rob's got behind him.
This was from the website. Yeah. It's probably one of those generic pictures that they pull. Yeah, and some of these pictures, when I do fundamentally, I probably need to update the stuff.
Now this is a Mexican tile.
It's a barrel clay roof. Okay, and that's one of the costliest roofs you could put on. Again, that's if you look at the house, obviously, they want to show off, something like a roof, and so that roof is probably 3 to 4 or 5 times as much as your normal roof. And the reason being is that you're doubling up on material as far as and that's a clay product, which again, that roof could be 15 years old. It looks like it was done yesterday. It doesn't get moldy. The other place that does get moldy is around the cement trim.
Is this what they call Mexican tile, or is that a little different? Mexican tile roof.
Well, I would say Mexican installed it. That most of the tile comes from either, Spain or Central America, South America, anywhere in those places. Also, that could be a tile that's made here in the good old USA. Could be really in the Ohio area. They make it quite like that as well.
And a roof like this, I know my wife's relatives live in Coral Gables, and they have an exact tile roof like this.
Yes.
And
that roof could be 60, 70 years old.
And he always said, her uncle says, man, I guess they crack sometimes, and you have to replace like sections. I'm not sure how that works.
Yeah, so the way they install this roof, it's a pane in the top. So the bottom is a pane, and you have the top piece. So sometimes the top will break, and it's still you still have your 2 pane pieces, and you can just put another piece on top. Blind posting that's walking on it, a lot of things. The clay tile is a little bit more fragile, obviously, than the cement tile. But to me, the looks and the trade-off of not having to do any maintenance to it is well worth it. You could get things.
Al, why would that why would that last 60 years? Would the underlayment go underneath it at the same time?
Well, typically those roofs that were done, back then, had a different system. Like you were talking about, things now don't last as long as they used to. Back then you used coal tar pitch, which is much different than the regular asphalt. It has molecules in it that the water just doesn't do anything to it. And And it's kind of like what they used to do these old telephone poles with, it was painted with like a green color. If you ever go up to that telephone pole and kind of smell it, it has this kind of a really tough scent. And
I
but
don't, I don't smell telephone.
Yeah.
I have before.
Yeah,
You have?
you're not the curious type. So, so, so the product basically, and that's why these houses in Palm Beach, a lot of roofs are original. They've been there a long time. You could, they've kind of outlawed that product a little bit because they found that it gives you cancer and everything else like it. But it's a long-lasting product, and that's the main reason. We used to tear off roofs in Palm Beach that were 70 years old. They were very impressive. The tiles were still stuck on. And that reason is because back then they used to use sand and Portland cement, and that bond is you need a sledgehammer to break that. Now everything's pre-mixed, it's watered down, it cracks, it breaks so easily. So, it's like those houses when it was built back then. It was built very, very solid. Now everything's kind of just the appearance of solid.
And the other thing I want to ask you, I know I see a lot of, I guess, newer roofs that have, it looks like concrete tiles. They're slabs, like square rectangular slabs, similar to this, but I don't think this is concrete.
That's good.
So how, again, it's an average. How long is the last life on a roof like that?
That doesn't really change the life of it. The life expectancy is really all based on your underlayment, the quality of that. A better underlayment will get you a better longevity as far as a concrete tile and a clay tile basically are like a sponge. It absorbs water and then passes through eventually. So your underlayment has to be good. Otherwise, a pretty tile roof is not going to keep it watertight.
When you're doing a new roof, what can they expect, from your company versus somebody else? Why would somebody use you?
Well, again, it's just a personal thing. I'm very involved in the whole process, start to finish. I always give them my personal cell number, and it's just it really is a matter of trust, like anything. You'll see my 78-year-old dad, walking around and checking on. I don't let him get up on the roof. Don't worry. But it's just a matter of having a good crew and making sure everything gets done right. So you don't want to have any issues.
And you've been around this your whole life, Al? I mean, this is something construction.
Yeah,
That was
I mean, I think I got into it when I was about 21, so at 55 was a good amount of my life. I've tried to leave several times, but it just sucked me back in.
And what's the most? I'm sure you've had some. For all the years of roofing, any crazy stories or any? You rip the roof up and you're like, holy crap! Like anything crazy?
Yeah, there's always crazy stories. No, I mean sometimes you expect things on some and you don't get it, and then you don't expect it on others and you do. Like there's 12 roofs that are 7, 8 years old, and when you tear it off, there's leaks everywhere, rotted wood and all that. And then you tear off a roof that's 45, 50 years old, and you look at that wood and it's immaculate. Back then they had the Dade County pine and it was really good quality wood, so it doesn't go as bad as usually. So. Yeah, it was, you find all kinds of surprises. I haven't found any money loot in the attics or anything like that.
Yeah, well, so I was wondering if they'd have some like stashed money somewhere.
Yeah, no, like that, unfortunately.
What about like have you come across issues? And I don't know if this is it would be a roofing issue because there's wood up there with termites or anything like that.
Well, there's lots of issues in South Florida with that. In a lot of cases, and particularly with a flat tile roof, again, the tile and the underlayment is so close together, and they continually paint it to keep it going and make it look nice. That traps the moisture. Well, termites love moisture, so we tore off a lot of flat tile roofs that, again, at first glance it doesn't look bad. As soon as you hit your hammer, you see all the termite spots pop up. So that whole sheet of plywood has to come off. We take pictures, we document, we let the owners know. In most cases, immediately they have the roof tinted, before it goes on to the final stage of putting on the tile. So we want to make sure that, that gets taken care of. and checked out. It could be something that's old and it's not active, but in most cases, they could come back easily. So you want to make sure that that's good.
Yeah, bats could get into a roof too.
Yeah, yeah, that crazy.
Anything, I guess, squirrels,
Yeah,
chipmunks.
we had it we had it at one point.
Yeah, bats, possums, raccoons, and then obviously the big ones, mice and rats, and how they get into these little small crevice sizes, the size of a quarter, is beyond me, but they do.
And I just want to say, as we're going
And
along,
bees. Don't forget about bees.
oh yes, bees. That's just true.
Beehives are, that's really bad. We've had some of those where we've had to cut out roofs, and the guy that did it didn't like what he felt right after that, when the bees all came out.
Ugh.
No.
As we're going along here, Al, you may be hearing a phone call from one Miss Esther Sutton, who was watching on LinkedIn. She had a few questions about a roof. I guess she's in the makes for maybe a new roof. So hopefully you'll be hearing from Esther. She commented on our LinkedIn post. So I forwarded your number to her. What's the best way for someone, if they're watching this right now or they watch this at a later time, to get in touch with you? Maybe they need a new roof, or maybe they just need a little repair to their roof. How can they get in touch with you?
Well, and again, I gave you my personal cell number, and the best way, believe it or not, is sometimes just to text me, because sometimes if I don't recognize the number, I won't answer. I'll let it go in a voicemail, but I always look at my text and so say, hey, so-and-so, I saw, or somebody recommended you, I have a tile roof, a shingle roof, whatever, I have some leaks, I want to get a quote. Here's my number, contact, boom, and I'm pretty good about, getting back to them quickly. Sometimes it might be a day or two before I check all my messages, but with my text, I try to do that, quickly.
Yeah, but Al's a world of knowledge. I think what's the reasons to use you are, one, you know your stuff down pat. Your knowledge of the roofing encyclopedia. You're honest. You've been in the area a long time. You're a local, and you're by the people who know, like a Kevin Rose and stuff. That's who they're going to.
Right.
And you get things done, and you charge. You're not the cheapest guy out there. You're not the most expensive guy. You charge a fair amount, and you're a pleasure to do business with.
And I think, Jeff, what you said is that the most important part is you live in a house. If you're going to live in that house for an extended period of time, if you're going to sell within a year or two, and it has a new roof, of course you don't need a new roof, but put some money aside into a separate account every month, $50, $100, whatever that amount is. And then by the time you reach that 15-year or 20-year or whatever Al said that life of that roof is, you've got the money. You don't have to scrounge. You don't have to worry, how am I going to pay for a new roof? So it's just comes down to planning and putting money aside.
Right. And that the number is supposed to be like 2% a year, and you got to plan. The roof is the biggest cost in there, but you've got AC, you've got water heater, and then there's another 2% you're supposed to put aside for style changes. Eventually, that granite black and brown kitchen goes out of style, and it's all white quartz. So and eventually that will happen as well. But you always have style changes, whether of stuff, and you have mechanical. But the roof is the one where you've really got to be careful of it. And if you're on the buy side, you really need to know the age of it, because you could buy a home that's going to pass inspection, and it's at the 14-year mark, but 6, 8 years or 4 years out, you might be coughing up some big dollars, and it's not one where where it's all aesthetics, fun, that you're enjoying a new hood and putting in new counters and picking colors out and stuff.
Make sure your hurricane insurance is up to date too.
Yeah, that's true. I got one last thing, and it's my last joke of the day. What do you call a roof that a storm blows 25% off of it?
A poor roof.
An oof.
An oof.
It's really bad.
That was bad. Well, listen, Al, I want to thank you for coming on today, telling us all about your company, what you do. Again, another local businessman in our area that we need to support, local businesses. That's what we do here at Echo Fine Properties. And Support local businessmen like Al. He's lived in this. How long have you lived here, Al? Forever.
Oh, shoot. When I graduated high school down in this area in the early 80s.
So,
I've been here a long time.
and he's been in roofing forever. His family comes from a construction background, so and just a friendly guy. And he's giving you his personal. Anytime someone gives their personal cell phone number, I'm always like, that's the guy I want to go with, because if they're going to give their personal cell, they have to deal with those phone calls, those text messages. I'm sure it gets overwhelming, but you do it. So thank you. And Jeff, I think that's it.
Yeah, that's it. So that's another edition of Real Estate Roundtable.
Thanks for watching, everyone, and have a wonderful, wonderful afternoon.
Thanks, Al. So long, everybody.
Thanks, Al. See ya.
Bye.